Just very quick moment. You know, there are haves and have-nots in stock, but how many of you are lucky enough to own a little GM stock? Hands. So there are a few people. I asked that because if you weren't paying attention 3 days ago on Tuesday, it went kind of through the roof, right? So congratulations. Was that because of you? 49 cents a share above expected. Car companies aren't supposed to be that good.
It's all supply chain.
Yeah, it's all supply chain.
Supply chain and great product.
So Shilpan, as you know, is the Chief Procurement Supply Chain Officer of GM, and we live in a complex time. So did you get a call at 3 a.m. about the whole Canada negotiations?
I'm usually not a social media person. I wake up throughout the night with my phone next to me, and I always see who did what, who did something to whom, and how does that affect me. And so it wasn't 3 a.m. At 6 a.m. I did get a call of what does.
Well, so you know, let me know. Negotiations are off, but it'll be a couple of days. We'll see. Yeah. But let me just start out. Look, I mean, I think our job today is to sort of get an understanding of what's happening in your world. You're the, you know, the America's biggest automaker. You know, there are so many different dimensions to what goes into this, rare earths, magnets, but tell them what you used to make when you joined GM in 1996. You were you're not just a bureaucrat, you're an engineer. What did you make? What did you design?
I started out on steering systems, so I got to do performance of our Corvette. I did the steering system.
You went from steering wheels to running the company, pretty much, with Mary, right?
Something like that.
Yeah, okay, good. Well, I just want to know that you're a real person, but in this, what I want to get an understanding of, you know, for almost 30 years, you've been at the company, and the company became designed. It's globally deployed. It's absorbing things around the world. It's in North America. And now you kind of had a heart attack during COVID around supply chain.
Yes.
How are you fixing it? What are you doing to deal with the tension between where the supplies and materials are that you need and being able to, I mean, apparently you're doing it really well because you did well this quarter, but how are you managing that tension of this moment?
I think COVID did wake us up around how quickly we can be taken down through a global crisis, whether it's geopolitical, whether it's you know, any other environmental issues that are happening around the world. And we turned from what was driving us into just in time, where it's have the leanest global inventory at the lowest cost country around the world, into just in case. Because the cost of not producing outweighs anything that you save from buying materials around the world.
Stockpiles.
Resiliency. So making sure you have more control over your supply chain. You know exactly what's coming where. And then we have modeling around what's the risk factors to where we buy.
So are stock analysts liking just in case versus just in time?
Well, I think a big part of why we've been able to produce,
right?
Even through the semiconductor crisis of 2022 and what's happening now with Nexperia, what happened earlier this year with heavy rare earth elements, we've taken zero downtime associated with it because of the way we're managing the supply chain.
You know, I've had the privilege of interviewing many of your colleagues at GM, and I think one of the interesting tension points out there is how we think about North American production, how you think about accessing these issues. And it seems to me that you know, there's an America and there's a North America, and I'd just like to know, how important is North America in your equation?
Extremely important. And I think, you know, when we talk about creating a fair and level playing field and the policies that are coming out now, it allows us to refocus into what we've talked about of build where you sell, buy where you build. And, you know, with USMCA coming up, it reinforces this North America. And from an affordability standpoint, what happens is all the tools that are coming in place now with automation and AI and machine learning, it allows us to do it in a way that's still affordable to the consumers.
So tell us, I mean, take us into the story a little bit of, you know, I didn't know anything about rare earths and magnets until about 2 months ago. Yeah. And I'm now an expert. I'm available to come talk to any of you about it. But as you get into rare earths, magnets, but it's so many more systems. I mean, so many systems go into mobility today. I mean, it's not just an automotive. When you think about the engineering dimension, but what are the practices that you're putting in place to either friendshore or bring in? What do you need? And I'm going to ask you, what in Washington, D.C., and I don't know if you know how powerful Meridian is in Washington. It's like the watering hole they all come into. So what do you want to have government policy people hear about what you need to succeed?
I think this is one of the big places where public and private sectors need to come together to have adequate scale and policy to drive a more resilient supply chain.
So how do you make public-private partnerships work? Because I hate that word more than any other term. It's boring, bland. How do you make effective public-private partnerships work?
So an example, back in 2021, coming out of COVID, we started recognizing where are the biggest risk in our supply chain. Heavy rare earth elements came to the top. Semiconductors came to the top. And we started looking at where else in the Earth's crust in a allied nation, local country basis, can we get this material? And we partnered with companies like MP Materials and VAC to start mining in a sustainable way here in the U.S. That was 4 years ago, 5 years ago. And what's happening now is when everyone's recognizing it is a true risk to your companies, we've seen things like the Department of Defense now join with MP Materials and Lithium Americas. We've seen consumer electronic companies join on board, but they'd be 5 years behind if we didn't start it 5 years ago. And so that's the recognition that it takes a long time to build a more resilient supply chain, given the information of how we could do it together, and then hopefully collectively, because we need the scale to do it. You need to have adequate volume. There are some elements, and I did have to pull out my periodic table on many of the elements we're facing. There's mainly 37 that we're facing. There's one, yttrium. We use a spoonful of yttrium for all of our car production. No one's going to invest in local mining for a spoonful of yttrium. But as a country, we have adequate volumes to justify local production.
So how do you say that?
Yttrium.
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 So does Mary Barra grade you on how well you do on yttrium?
She grades me on making sure our operations can run without disruption.
That's how she. So I want people to know you're kind of like in a Wizard of Oz situation, right? You have I'd like our audience to know how big your operation is, and as you're kind of looking, I'm always interested. I remember years ago I went to AT&T's like global, what they call GNOC. And you saw all the communications in the United States going on at the same time.
Yes.
Do you have a board like that where you're looking? So tell us about that.
So we have a command center.
Is it secret?
We have a command center. In fact, we bring other companies through to learn about our command center that manages, we've got over 20,000 suppliers. We've got, we buy from over 100 countries. We spend over $100 billion annually in consumption of material. And this command center watches the flow of material. And between what we've built on AI of it, it starts highlighting where risk factors happen. If there's an earthquake here, how does it map through our supply chain? You've got to get to dirt and water. And it then starts telling you immediately what you need to do. What we know in a crisis, every hour matters. And every insight you get earlier gives you an opportunity to be successful.
How much of that command center, which I assume is not just North America, but global, is becoming denser and denser in North America? Are you monitoring and watching that, in terms of looking at how you're accessing materials in a time where, frankly, globalization seems not to be the wave that many people are surfing? But I mean, are you watching that? And I want to ask that, how fragile is that? Because you're talking about it in such a strong way, but how fragile is that to policy and the moment we're in?
The risk factors, like we've had over 80 fires in our suppliers just this year alone that we've had to manage. And these are things that could have taken us down if we weren't getting ahead of it. And part of what we're finding is the more control that you have in your supply chain, the more resilient you build it, the better off you are to handle these crises. And so we have shifted a big portion of our buy here to North America and to the U.S. We're growing incrementally $5 billion of spend here in the U.S. And part of that is because we can have better control when things go bad. How do we send our teams in, our operations, to help sustain and rebuild these facilities?
How do you lock this in? And I'm always interested in how do you inculcate a team or an orientation over time to sort of future-proof this? Because, let's just be bottom line. America had a real problem. We had a heart attack with, supply chain around the world. It wasn't very comfortable for a lot of folks. How do you lock this in a way that we don't readopt bad behaviors of the past?
So that comes into play of the tools that are available now. When we were chasing parts around the world, it was because when there was free open trade, there was material you could buy at a more affordable price around the world. When you bring in technology like automation and machine learning capabilities into the operations, you kind of neutralize the competitiveness of what it takes to build parts around the world. And then now when you layer on less logistics, less inventory. From an enterprise view, it's actually more affordable to do it in North America for North America operators.
All right, I've got a cool last question. So General Motors makes the Beast. You all know what the Beast is? The Beast is President Trump's super armored limo.
Yes.
And Secret Service apparently tweeted now they want a super armored Escalade, which you also make. So I'm interested, and we can make some news of this. Can you make it without Canada and Mexico?
Oh, I've got to see what I'm allowed to say or not. So, I mean, it is time to upgrade to an Escalade. That's what I drive. I love the Escalade, and we're proud to be the supplier of the Beast and provide secure vehicles for even the Secret Service. And so our vehicles do have North America origin parts, and we manage to make sure, especially on the Beast.
So I'm pretty sure he just said he needs Canada and Mexico for the Beast. So ladies and gentlemen, Shilpan, Amin, thank you so much for joining us today. Great.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you.